Here's something I see all the time. A founder decides they need to get serious about their brand. Maybe it's a rebrand. Maybe it's finally launching that content that they've been putting off. Or maybe they're gearing up for a big campaign. And their first instinct is to find someone that can handle all of it for them. They reach out to a strategist, a content creator, an agency. They say, here's our business. Here's what we sell. Can you figure out our creative direction and execute it? And whoever they hire, of course, says yes, takes their money, and gets to work. A few weeks later, they're looking through deliverables and something feels off. The work might be beautiful and it might be technically sound, but it doesn't capture what their brand is really about. Then the founder is confused because they hired experts to do this. What happened is that the founder thought that they could outsource their thinking. They wanted to hand off not just the execution, but the strategic work that should drive everything. They showed up with a credit card, but not with context, the conviction, or the care that actually makes creative work effective. And no amount of expertise or money can fix that gap. Hi everyone, welcome back. And if you're new here, I'm Mariela, and on this channel, I help founders build brands that actually stand out. Today, I want to talk to you about something that I see derailing creative projects all the time. And that is the gap between strategy and execution, and why you can't outsource your way out of doing the strategic thinking. Let's get into it. But first, a snack. This is not sponsored. It's just my favorite snack at the moment. Let's break down what usually happens when a founder knows that they need creative work. They may need a simple content plan, a rebrand, an ad campaign, whatever it is. And of course, they're busy running their business. But when things start to fall apart is when founders think that creative direction is something that they can fully delegate. The typical founder approach might look something like this. They show up for kickoff meetings only. They hand over basic business information. They disappear from planning sessions. They skip the hard questions about positioning, and they just want a finished plan to approve. And look, I get it. You're juggling 1,000 things. The whole point of hiring experts is so that you don't have to think about everything yourself. But creative direction isn't something you can outsource and completely forget about, because the people you hire, no matter how talented they are, don't have what you have. As a founder, there are some things about your brand that only you can know. These are things like how your customers actually talk about their problems, what objections come up in every sales call, which features customers rave about versus never mention, your vision for where the brand is going in 3 years, and what you're willing to sacrifice to get there. A strategist can guide you through the thinking process. They can ask you the right questions, push you to get clearer, and help you avoid common pitfalls. But they can't do the thinking for you. And when founders try to hand off that responsibility completely, the work ends up generic and not connecting with their audience. And before we go any further, I want to give you some real life examples of what this looks like failing. First example is the restaurant rebrand. I've actually seen this happen. A restaurant brings in an agency for a brand refresh. The agency creates a sleek and minimal design that looks great, but completely erases the warm and family-owned feeling that made regulars fall in love with the restaurant in the first place. But why is that? Because the founder handed over the project to the agency without articulating what needed to be preserved. They weren't involved enough to say, this is beautiful, but this is not us. And the final example is what I'm calling the content creator. A designer wants to start creating content for their business. They know they want to be visible, build an audience on a new platform, all of that. So they decide to start recording videos whenever inspiration strikes, and they send the footage off to an editor to make something good. There's no plan for what the content should accomplish, no thought about who it's for or what belief it should change. They're just random videos with the hope that someone can turn them into coherent strategy. Spoiler alert, that never works. Strategy comes first. And the work produced isn't necessarily bad. It's simply directionless, because the person who would be shaping the direction wasn't involved enough to actually shape it. The key takeaway here is you can hire people to guide and execute for you, but you can't hire someone to care about your brand the way you do or to make strategic decisions without your deep involvement. So what do I mean when I talk about creative direction or the strategic side? I'm talking about the thinking that happens before any work gets made. You need to answer the following strategic questions. Who is this really for? Don't think about just demographics, but what problem is it solving right now? What do they currently believe that we need to change or reinforce? If this could only do one thing, what would it be? What makes us different, and why would anyone care? Let's look at a real example here. Think about Apple's Shot on iPhone campaign. I'm sure we all know it. The strategic thinking behind that campaign wasn't just to show that our cameras are good. The insight was that people already take tons of photos on their phones, and they want to feel like artists, not just casual photographers. The decision was to make everyday people feel like their creativity matters and that it is worth celebrating. Apple's internal team didn't outsource that thinking. They lived in it, they debated it. Leadership was deeply involved in shaping that direction because it was a business decision about how they want their product to be positioned. Or another example is liquid death. The strategic thinking here was recognizing that drinking water is boring, and people who are sober but want to feel included at social events are tired of being marketed to like they're delicate. The direction here became, what if we sold water like it's a rebellious choice? All of that didn't come from a strategist working in isolation. That came from founders who had strong opinions about their product and their positioning, and who stayed deeply involved in how their brand showed up in the space. This is why you cannot fully outsource the strategic side, because these decisions, the ones that actually make your brand distinctive and effective, require you to bring along your knowledge of your business, your vision, and your conviction to the table. And to clarify, this is what a strategist actually does. A strategist facilitates the thinking process. They ask better questions than you'd ask yourself. They challenge your assumptions and they help you get clearer. But they can't replace your involvement. The key takeaway here is creative direction is the who, what, and why that comes before execution. A strategist guides you through finding those answers, but you have to show up and do the thinking. And if you found this helpful so far, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps other finders find this content as well. So let's talk about why you specifically can't outsource this work, even if you really want to. First, you're the only one who truly knows your customers. You've had hundreds of conversations with them. You know what they say versus what they mean. You know the moment they decide to buy and what almost stopped them. You know the language they use when they describe their problems. And you know exactly what they're trying to say when they ask certain questions. That's not information that you can hand off to a strategist during a kickoff meeting and expect them to internalize it. When you're involved in the creative direction, that knowledge becomes part of the foundation. Second, you understand your market positioning better than anyone. You know why you're different from your competitors and why that makes a difference. You know which battles you're going to win and which ones you're willing to concede. A strategist can help you articulate that positioning and help you get sharper, but they can't decide your positioning for you. If you're not in the room when those decisions are being made, someone else is making assumptions about your business that might send you in the completely wrong direction. Third, you have conviction about your brand that can't be outsourced. The brands that break through aren't the ones that play it safe. They're the ones where someone had a strong point of view and the courage to commit to it. That conviction has to come from leadership. When you're deeply involved in creative direction, you can push for a bold choice instead of playing it safe. You can say, this doesn't feel like us, not because of personal taste, but because you know what the brand stands for. And when you're absent from that process, everything defaults to safe and generic. And fourth, being involved prevents expensive mistakes before they happen. When you're part of the creative direction, you can catch misalignments early. Fixing these mistakes in the planning phase costs you nothing. And look, this doesn't mean you shouldn't hire strategists or experts. You absolutely should. A good strategist brings frameworks that you don't have. They ask questions that you wouldn't think to ask and helps you avoid making mistakes that they've seen other brands make. Think of them as a guide. But a strategist buys you guidance, not a replacement for your involvement. They help you think more clearly. They don't think for you. The best creative work I've seen is from founders who understand it. The key takeaway here is hiring experts buys you better questions and better execution, but it doesn't buy you a pass on being deeply involved. Show up for the strategy, bring your context and conviction, then empower your team to execute. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more content on building brands that stand out in the market. Look, beautiful execution matters. That goes without saying. A strategically sound campaign with a bad design won't work any better than a gorgeous campaign that says nothing. You need both, but they're different skills and they happen in sequence. So if you're about to kick off a creative project, here's my challenge to you. Don't just hire someone and disappear. Bring in the experts that you need, strategists, content creators, designers, whoever you need, but show up for the strategic work. Get in the room, answer hard questions, bring your knowledge of your customers and your vision of the brand. Do the thinking alongside your team. Because the reality is, your involvement in the strategy is what makes the work distinctive. Final takeaway here is, hire experts to guide and execute for you, but never outsource your involvement in the strategic thinking. That's where your brand becomes distinctive. If this helped you think differently about your role in the creative process, go ahead and leave me a comment and let me know. What was your biggest takeaway? All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye!